First, the bad news. SAP Business AI won't help you generate cubist versions of your family's holiday photos. But it will help you understand which supplier is best to help you roll out your plant-based packaging in Southeast Asia, or identify the training your junior project manager needs to rise up the ranks, and automate repetitive tasks while you focus on big innovations, so you can be ready for the next opportunity. Revolutionary technology, real-world results. That's SAP Business AI.
Stop punishing yourself with bland, chalky protein shakes and fuel your fitness with the best protein in the game at GNC. We've got the hottest brands and flavors that legit taste like cookies, your favorite cereal, indulgent desserts, and more. It's on at GNC.
We've all got those parts of our house where the internet just won't go. Well, if you had wall-to-wall Wi-Fi from Xfinity, you could worry less about dead spots. Because with wall-to-wall Wi-Fi from Xfinity, you get fast speeds, reliable connection in every room, and power for all your devices, even when everyone's online. That's wall-to-wall Wi-Fi, only on the Xfinity 10G network. Restrictions apply. Not available in all areas. Actual speeds vary.
Hello and welcome to Want to Hear Something Weird, a weekly wild, weird podcast about wild, weird stuff. I'm one of your wild, weird hosts, Tom.
I'm your normal host, Laura.
Laura, this week I thought we would talk about I don't think we've really done any like ESP type stuff.
Ooh, no.
Well, this isn't actually like ESP.
All right.
I guess it is in a way. This is more a story about prophecy, I guess. People who claim that they can see the future. I wanted to do something ESP related because I find the topic fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that there's some extra sensory perception, if you will, that is beyond the five senses we're familiar with.
Right.
Although I forget, there is something about how, forget what the actual number is of how many senses they say we have, because there are some things like being able to know if you're hungry or not. That's considered a sense. Hot and cold, I think, is considered separate from touch. So yeah, I always forget.
Things that are necessary for human survival.
Yeah, but that we don't consider one of the five senses, and that we don't necessarily consider a extra sense.
A sixth
sense. That's hard to say. I read something recently, and somebody was talking about that we look back at science from, hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, and we laugh at the things that people thought were the things that people weren't aware of. People, before the discovery of gravity, people had all these like crazy mathematics to kind of make other things work to try and figure it out. And then we discovered gravity, and it was like, oh, that's not the way the planets spin. It has nothing to do with that. It's gravity. Here, this makes more sense. And I forget who it was, but they had asked them, what do you think is the thing right now that we're getting wrong, or that we're not focusing on, that maybe 100 years from now people will look back and laugh at us?
Oh, modern day
because I always think about that, because we always laugh at everything.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's like, yeah, but there has to be stuff we're doing right now that we're not seeing.
Oh, absolutely.
There aren't stories of, and then one day we started figuring everything out and we stopped getting things wrong, and we've been right ever since.
Right.
And this person said the gut, that we're just starting to understand the relationship between the gut and how that influences our actions and the way we perceive the world. You hear that a lot. If you have a gut feeling that something's wrong, then get out of there.
Yeah.
There are a lot of stories. I was considering doing this episode about spontaneous ESP.
Human combustion? We already did that.
No, not spontaneous human combustion. ESP can also be spontaneous. So basically the idea that, and I think everybody has experienced something like this, or knows somebody who's experienced something like this, where it's not, oh, my friend is a psychic, or I'm a psychic, and I always get these premonitions, but that people will get a sudden kind of premonition out of nowhere and go like, Yeah, I don't know about this.
Mhm.
Every time there's like any kind of big disaster, you always hear of people that were supposed to be on the plane, supposed to be on the Titanic, but they had a nightmare or just a bad feeling and they decided, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, their gut is telling them, whether they consciously know it or not, to avoid a certain situation.
And the question is, in those cases, I mean, sometimes you hear this and it's like, oh, my gut told me not to walk down that dark alley, and thank God I didn't. It's like, yeah, that might have been like common sense also, kind of.
Do you think you would trust your gut in a situation like that? If it was like, okay, we're about to go on this incredible vacation, and then the night before you had this feeling, we really shouldn't go. Do you think you'd listen to that?
I don't think I would.
I don't think I would either. I think I just have too much anxiety all the time that I would just like talk myself out of it.
Yeah, I would just write it off as you're anxious about this.
Yeah.
Especially if doing that involved any kind of monetary loss.
Right.
Or like not being able to go on that vacation.
Yeah.
Forget it. I could have a ghost appearing to me in my room at night telling me, don't go on that plane. I'd be like, the tickets are non-refundable. What do you want me to do? But there are some stories of people that they don't just have spontaneous ESP. They got ESP all the time.
Oh.
They've got the complete package.
Okay.
And one such person that claimed to have had this ability is a woman called Baba Vanga.
Okay.
Baba, first name. Vanga, second
Last name. Okay.
Or Vanga. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it. Vanga. But anyway, this woman was known as the Nostradamus of the Balkans.
Okay.
She was born in a Bulgarian village. She was born prematurely in 1911, what is now Macedonia. And she had, a difficult childhood, as you would imagine, in the early 1900s in Macedonia, but more or less unremarkable, nothing crazy. A sad childhood. She lost her mom young. Her dad went off to, I presume, the First World War there. But everything changed when she turned 12. Not when she turned 12, when she was 12. I don't think this happened on her birthday. But according to her followers, so she has kind of like an apparatus, or she died in 1996, spoiler alert. But she had kind of an apparatus around her, and which we'll get to because there's some, weirdness there. But according to them, she was playing with her cousins in her village when a sudden tornado happened. The tornado picked her up and threw her into a nearby field. When they found her family, she had so much dust and dirt in her eyes that they were like crusted shut.
Yikes.
In the aftermath, she started going blind, and she started to have strange dreams and visions about the future. So essentially, she lost her eyesight, but seemingly gained the ability to see into the future, to perceive things that hadn't happened yet.
Okay. And all because of this tornado accident.
That seems like the case. It could also be, there are a lot of stories about psychic abilities manifesting during puberty.
Oh.
And she would have been right around that age.
Yeah.
Could have been those two factors together. Could have been the bad luck of getting picked up and thrown in a tornado. Somebody felt bad for her and said, all right, we'll give her psychic abilities in exchange for that. But anyway, she really kind of blew up afterward. People believed her during her life, but she made a lot of claims that weren't necessarily substantiated yet.
Okay.
But in 1980, she allegedly predicted that.
So she's much later in life, in 1980.
Oh, yeah. It seems like most of her visionary career happened while she was an old lady. That was part of the charm. Nobody wants a 25-year-old telling them the future. But if it's a blind 85-year-old woman, I don't know, I'd be more likely to believe her, right? So in 1980, she allegedly predicted that in August 1999, Kursk, which is a city in Russia, I believe, would be covered with water and the whole world will weep over it. Now, that didn't happen, but what did happen is in the year 2000, there was a nuclear submarine disaster that was the Kursk. So she said, the Kursk will be covered in water and the whole world will weep. Well, the Kursk submarine sank, and it was something like around 120 people that died in the sub. And, it was seen as like a really horrific disaster. So since then, or not since then, in addition to that, these are some of the things that her believers say she has predicted. They say she predicted the submarine disaster, that she predicted global warming, that she predicted 9/11 with this prediction. Horror, horror. The American brethren will fall after being attacked by the steel birds. The wolves will be howling in a bush, and innocent blood will be gushing.
Yikes.
So people took that, steel birds being the planes. The mention of howling in a bush, and it was George W. Bush who was in charge at the time. The one big wrench I'll throw into that prediction is she didn't say a date. She didn't, she just kind of threw this out there. And it's like, okay, that doesn't really help us if you can't tell us when these bad things are going to happen. Also claimed to have predicted the 2004 Boxing Day tsunami. A huge wave will cover a big coast covered with people and towns, and everything will disappear beneath the water. Everything will melt just like ice. Now, again, you're not really giving a specific date. You're saying a huge wave will cover a big coast.
Yeah.
Tsunamis happen.
Right. Has she ever given a date for anything that you know of?
The only instance I could find was the Kursk, and she was off by a year. But even that was like considered, I don't know, close enough.
Yeah.
It's also a little bit tough because a lot of the predictions, she was making these predictions in Russian. And I think there's a lot more resources on the Russian side of the internet with these predictions than there are on the US side. And she has a lot more believers in the former Soviet bloc over there. But she also predicted a great Muslim war, which people thought was either the beginning of Arab Spring or the rise of ISIS. But again, it's kind of like, well, it's
big, yeah.
But here's a big one that she did get right. She predicted specifically that the 44th president of America would be African American. And I don't know if you remember, but Barack Obama was elected 44th president. But along with that, she also predicted that he would be the last president. No, we've had two since then.
We don't need to get political.
Although she did predict, too, that after the 44th president, there would be somebody else that people take to be Trump, and said everyone will put their hopes in him to end it, but the opposite will happen. He will bring the country down and conflicts between North and South states will escalate. Which, also pretty true. She gave the prediction that essentially the 44th president will cause a lot of problems. Somebody else will come along. They won't actually get to the point of being elected president, but people will start following him. But before that can happen, civil war will erupt, which is not what happened. But still, to get the 44th president will be a black man was pretty good, I'd say. She claims to have predicted World War II, the date on which Tsar Boris III died, the breakup of Czechoslovakia, the breakup of the Soviet Union, the breakup of Yugoslavia, East and West Germany's reunification, Boris Yeltsin's election, the Chernobyl disaster, the date of Stalin's death, the conflicts in Syria, and the separation of Crimea. Now, what I think is most interesting about this, I want to talk about the I want to talk about what she predicted, because apparently she had, even though dates for a lot of these older predictions that she got right are hard to find, or at least I could not find them, she did have specific predictions for years all the way up to, let me see what the last year she had predictions for, the year 5079. So 5079, 3,000 years, a little more than 3,000 years into the future. And she did, for a lot of these, have year-by-year predictions. So I want to talk about what she predicted for 2023 so we can do a year review.
Yeah.
What she predicts for this year, and then what she predicts 3,000 years from now.
Okay, I'm nervous.
Does Monday at the office feel like a storm? Not with Microsoft Copilot. That feeling when Copilot gets everyone up to speed instantly? It's sunny again. When Copilot simplifies complex data so your teams can act, that sun's shining on a beach. And when Copilot uncovers hidden insights, you're on that beach with your people, and you find buried treasure. That's Microsoft Copilot. Learn more at Microsoft.com/AI for all.
All right, Laura, I am reading from history.co.uk, which is the History Channel, but in the United Kingdom. These are her predictions for 2023, the year that's already passed. So let's see how she did. They have 3 big ones. The first one, a devastating solar storm. One of the most alarming 2023 predictions concerns a solar storm. The term solar storm can refer to several phenomena on the sun's surface, including solar flares and coronal mass injections. The latter are vast eruptions of plasma that are capable of reaching the Earth, causing geomagnetic storms that could potentially fry power grids and cause widespread havoc. The most dramatic example in recorded history was the Carrington event of 1859. Named after British astronomer Richard Carrington, it knocked out telegraph networks and even caused fires and electric shocks. If such an event was to happen today in our electrified world, the effects on communication services and everyday lives would be almost unfathomable. They couldn't even fathom it. Indeed, experts believe the damage to worldwide infrastructures could lead to blackouts that last for years, triggering societal chaos and causing financial markets to go into a tailspin. On the plus side, at least the aurora would look amazing. Now, this is something that I've seen scientists predict that, it's like one of those many horrifying things that you hear about happening hundreds or thousands or millions of years ago. And then scientists go, oh, actually, we're overdue.
Yeah.
We should have another one coming up. The idea of a solar storm nowadays, and I think there's even like a few movies about, what would happen. It could cause a lot of chaos because it could really damage the electronics that were, just barely around in 1859. But nowadays, who knows what would happen? Everybody's phones could pop inside their pockets.
Right.
To say nothing of the vast amount of wires and generators we have now that we did not have back then.
Mm-hmm.
But alas, that didn't happen in 2023.
That's good.
Yeah, so 0 for 1 so far.
Hopefully she wasn't a year off with that one.
Yeah, well, yeah, I didn't even think about that, but you're right. Her second prediction, a change in Earth's orbit, saying that there would be a small, I'm trying to see exactly what she predicted. This is also confusing, this history article, because it doesn't have here's exactly what she said.
Okay.
And then here's the translation.
Uh-huh.
I don't even know if they put out some of that now. I think her followers kind of have her stuff and they interpret it and go, okay, this is what she's saying is going to happen.
Okay.
She's not talking about steel birds. She's talking about airplanes, like that kind of thing.
So they've already interpreted it.
Yeah, and they're kind of
rather than we're getting the raw prediction from her. It's
that
already there.
interpret.
Right. It's their interpretation, which they're already putting a potential spin on it that may or may not be helpful or accurate.
Because you think about, there's a 85-year-old woman that lived in a very rural area for her entire life.
Mm-hmm.
How familiar is she with the idea of solar storms and how the Earth's orbit works,
Right.
Or did she predict I don't know, something that can kind of be interpreted a few different ways, and this is how they're saying it. But the third thing she predicted, a bioweapon atrocity, which, again, thankfully did not happen. Very few of these predictions are like, and in 2025, a big party, and everyone's invited, and everybody has a great time. No? A lot of downer predictions.
Yeah, really.
So she
those are the only ones that they...
Those are the only ones I could find
they
for
tell us about.
2023 at least.
Okay.
But we're already 2 months down in 2024. In 2024. That's this year. Let's see what she predicted for 2024. They also say she predicted Princess Diana dying, but I couldn't find exactly what that was that they pointed to.
Yeah, it would be interesting how she would have, what she said exactly there.
Yeah. So in 2024, interestingly, Baba Vanga says Russian President Vladimir Putin will be killed by a, quote, fellow countryman, which, probably a pretty good chance of that happening, better than normal chances, right?
Careful
because
what you
of
say.
the war going on there.
This goes on the internet. Be careful what you say. The
She's-
World Wide Web.
She said that rising debt levels and escalating geopolitical tensions risk plunging the global economy into chaos. She also forecasts a worsening climate, with several terrifying weather events wreaking havoc throughout the year. Cyber attacks, she said, and again, the woman died in 1996, so did she say cyber attacks, or did she say, a swarm of electronic bees will create havoc, put the world in peril, and a rise in attacks on critical infrastructure like power grids and water treatment plants are predicted. On a more positive note,
Thank you.
the Bulgarian also reportedly predicted new treatments for devastating diseases like Alzheimer's and cancer next year. We got to wait till next year for those, as well as a major technological breakthrough in quantum computing, which very possible next year or this year. There's a lot of work going on in quantum computing.
Yeah.
But again, did this woman in 1996,
Say
this little
quantum computing.
babushka, say, yeah, they're finally going to crack quantum computing in 2024. So, and then she said beyond next year, Baba Vanga said world hunger will end by 2028, which would be, hey, that would be great if that happened.
That would be.
But I'm not seeing any real signs to point to that being something that's going to happen in the next few years.
Mostly a pretty plausible thing.
Yeah,
which is scary, but
right, and that's why I'd love to see what the actual predictions are, because it feels like these are being interpreted considering what's going on, like especially the idea of Putin being
the leader,
being assassinated by a countryman. It's like, okay, did she predict Putin?
Yeah.
Or did she predict the Russian president?
Right.
Or is it she predicted a political assassination, and considering the global climate right now, that's where your interpretation pointed to.
Right.
Which could still be interesting. I'd still like to know what it is. Maybe it is something when you read it, you go, oh yeah, I guess that is. There's only so many people that could point to, and one would be the president of Russia. If it's a big country, and also she lived within the Soviet Union for a time, and close to Russia, so I would assume she would also be pretty familiar. And would have a pretty specific prediction there. But let's talk about her predictions beyond.
I'm scared.
Okay. We're going to start with 2010. Her prediction for 2010.
That happened already.
Well, I got bad news, because World War III is starting in 2010. The war will begin in November 2010 and end in October 2014. Will begin as usual, then nuclear will be used initially, and then chemical weapons. 2011, as a result of the fallout of nuclear fallout in the northern hemisphere, there won't be any animals or vegetation. Then Muslims will wage war against chemical surviving Europeans. So she predicted like,
There will be people who survive a chemical war.
yeah, and then there would be a war between like European countries and Middle Eastern countries. 2014, most people will suffer skin cancer and other skin diseases because of the chemical war. 2016, Europe is almost empty. 18, new China becomes a world power, developing countries in turn operated from exploiters. And that's one that, that her believers pointed. They're like, she said in 2018, China will become a world power. And it's like, they became a world power before. So like, she's right, but
Not quite nailing the date.
Not nailing the date at all. And also she's saying that's going to happen because Europe's basically going to be gone at that point, which again is not what happened. 2023, as I just said, a change in Earth's orbit. As best we can tell, that has not happened. 2028, a new energy source, probably a controlled thermonuclear reaction. Hunger is gradually being overcome. Launch a manned spacecraft to Venus. That's not going to happen. 5 or 4 years from now, we're not going to Venus. But maybe. I mean, I guess you could say if some crazy new energy were discovered, that could dramatically help hunger very quickly. 2033, the polar ice caps are melting. Greater levels of the ocean. Guess what, Baba? That already started happening.
Yeah.
2043, the world economy is thriving. 2046, any bodies can be manufactured. Replacing the bodies is becoming one of the best methods of treatment. So they
like
think
parts
this
of bodies?
Yeah, they think this is like organ manufacturing or like cloning organs.
Yeah.
And again, by 2046,
Yeah,
I'd be
possible.
surprised if there isn't something along those lines. 2066, during the attack on the Muslim Rome, she said that Rome would become a Muslim city, like as a result of this war, I guess. The United States used a new kind of weapon, the climate, a sharp cooling or instant freezing weapon. So similar to the weapon Mr. Freeze had in Joel Schumacher's Batman and Robin, where he told Gotham City to chill and then shot them with a chilling laser. Yeah, and it was pretty devastating. All these people were frozen until...
Do you think she saw Batman and Robin?
Yeah, she might have. It did come out before she died, I think. It might have even been the year she died. Maybe it was the last movie she saw, and that's where all these keep going. It says here, old Schwarzenegger will find the cure for his frozen wife. 2076, communism everywhere, just a classless society. 2084, the restoration of nature, which is kind of ominous sounding.
What does that mean? Like nature takes
the
over?
Restoration of nature. Either nature takes over, I would interpret that as, or like we didn't have nature anymore for like a good 50 years there. And guess what, baby? Nature's back. 2088, a new disease, aging for a few seconds.
What?
And then 2097, the rapid aging defeated.
Aging for a few seconds? What does that mean?
I would assume that means you're aging every few seconds. It's some kind of rapid aging disease.
Well, we all are aging every second.
Well, you know what I mean. Aging more.
Okay.
21.
So the disease is aging rapidly.
Yes. But then we find a cure for it within 9 years. So 2100, artificial sun illuminates the dark side of the earth, which isn't really like a problem, you know? Like, nighttime. How do we get rid of this? The stupid nighttime. If only it were daytime all the time.
We don't
all
know
over
what the
the
future
world.
holds. Maybe
It's
nighttime
true.
is a problem.
I think creating another sun would cause more problems than it would solve. 2111, people become living robots. So it's like cyborgs in some way, which again, in 100 years, I'm sure people will have all kinds of implants and cybernetics, things like that.
Yeah.
2123, the war between small nations. Big nations do not intervene. 2125, Hungary will receive signals from space. 2130,
The country Hungary?
yeah, 2130 underwater colony with the help of those aliens that reached out to Hungary.
They were already on the Earth underwater, probably.
Maybe. 2164. Here's another one that's kind of very ominous. Doesn't give a lot of info. Animals turn half human.
Like centaurs?
Like centaur, I mean, maybe it's the result of like genetic manipulation. You know, they're already doing that with pigs, putting human cells in them to see if we can make more compatible organ transplants. And there have been a lot of advances in that. 2167, a new religion. 2170, major drought. 2183, a colony on Mars becomes a nuclear power and demands independence from Earth. Could happen. Yeah, and then it just kind of goes on from there. It gets like a little weird. I mean, it talks a lot about like race mixing and stuff that I don't want to really get into. That seems, yeah. And also she has crazy predictions about like 2299 in France, guerrilla movement against Islam. 2304, secrets of the moon revealed. Oh, 2341, something terrible is approaching Earth from space. 2354, an accident with one of our suns. You know, one of the new ones that we made.
Okay.
Another famine. We have 2 artificial suns. They collide. War on Mars. Comet hits the moon. I'll skip all the way to the end. 5079, end of the world. And that's it.
Great.
But leading up to that, 5076, a boundary universe. With it, no one knows. 5078, the decision to leave the boundaries of the universe, while about 40% of the population is against it. So I guess she's basically saying, like, we eventually try and get outside of our own universe, and that somehow causes the end of everything in about 3,000 years.
Some light fun topics there.
Yeah. I mean, I do find it, you know, it's encouraging to read about how she predicts all these like world wars and stuff, but it sounds like we bounce back pretty quick and keep on keeping on. Decide to make some artificial suns. But yeah, those are the predictions of Baba Vanga, who I think her followers claim some kind of crazy, like, you know, 85% success rate with her predictions. But yeah.
Of the ones that have happened so far?
Yes. But I feel like as we could see from reading through these, I think they were kind of grading her on a curve. I think they were kind of like, if this could even vaguely fit something, then we're counting that. Yeah.
I think
not the kind of prophecies that you can even really do much about, you know?
You have to take them with a very large grain of salt.
Yeah.
How does someone, you've been saying she's got these followers, how does someone like her even get a following?
I believe she also would give people personal predictions.
So like a psychic.
Yeah. Which I did find an article that from, let me see, I believe it was from the New York Times from a while ago that, here it is. Yeah. New York Times in 1995. So right before she died, they talked to a local woman and she said, local people don't believe in her. She just looks at you, asks you what's wrong, and then repeats phrases she has memorized. A lot of what she does is for money.
Oh.
So it sounds like she had the standard psychic, you come to her with problems and she can see the future and give you advice. And I guess a lot of those people probably then turned into true believers of hers. And, it also sounds like there was probably a lot of money being made, especially in an area where money wasn't easy to come by. So she probably had a lot of people around her kind of putting all these things out, and you put out these big predictions and then people, really think she's important.
Yeah.
And they'll come from wherever and pay whatever to have her tell them, whatever it is, if their son is going to survive or whatever, if he's sick. Yeah. So I'm sure it was just kind of that typical psychic preying on desperate people thing. which is kind of my feeling about most psychics.
I know it is.
Yeah. I do believe that there is some kind of perception beyond what we can understand, but I don't think it's as easily controlled as psychics would like us to believe.
I don't know.
Right.
I didn't know anything about her. So this was interesting to hear about her, but I don't know that I believe a lot of
no, I don't believe a lot of it either. I think she is full of it.
Wow. You heard it here, folks.
You know who's not full of it? Us. You should check out what should they check out? Our social media?
Yes.
Want to Hear Pod on most social media, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, all those things. You can email us if you have a good story, wantohearpod@gmail.com. And also, if you got a few minutes, leave us a nice review on iTunes, or not iTunes, Apple Podcasts. What am I?
Good grief.
An old man? Or Spotify. Those things really help us out, especially a new whippersnapper young show like us. We're not Baba Vangas. We haven't been doing this for 80 years. We're new to this. We
fresh.
Need help.
And tell a friend.
And tell a friend. Tell your weirdest friend about it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all for this week. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening.
Stay weird.
Want to Hear Something Weird is a Clamor audio production, distributed by the Cloud 10 Network. Hosted and executive produced by Tom Reynolds and me, Laura Anderson. Executive produced by Aaron Hilliard.
Clamor General Manager Rich Statter. Associate Producer Ethan Aronson. Post-production supervised by Devin Ruskin. Production Assistant Samara Mullick. Special thanks to Sim Sarna and Saiba Krieger at Cloud 10.
Seeking the truth never gets old. Introducing June's Journey, the free-to-play mobile game that will immerse you in a thrilling murder mystery. Join June Parker as she uncovers hidden objects and clues to solve her sister's death in a beautifully illustrated world set in the Roaring '20s. With new chapters added every week, the excitement never ends. Download June's Journey now on your Android or iOS device, or play on PC through Facebook Games.